Christmas dinner smelled like rosemary lamb and betrayal. My son Darren stood up, raised his glass, and cut through the chatter like a blade. Dad, you're no longer part of this family. Get out of this house. The room froze. Sienna, his wife, smiled barely. My relatives stared, and I just sat there. No reaction, no words, just a calm nod. I slid an envelope across the table. Here's your gift, son. He opened it and screamed. The table was silent, stunned. That was the sound of my revenge. Just beginning. Before we continue, please like and subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you are listening from today. It didn't feel real at first. The lights on the tree still twinkled. The rosemary scent still clung to the lamb chops. But the warmth in the room had vanished. All that remained was cold calculation and the brittle edge of something broken, something that wasn't going to be put back together this time. I didn't look at him. I looked past him at the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking away the final moments of my silence. 3 months ago, I was the rock of this house. That's what Darren used to say in his childhood speeches. I was the man who fixed the roof when storms ripped it open, the one who worked double shifts so he could get braces, college, and a first car. My late wife Margaret used to say, I gave too much. One day, Arthur, she'd say, folding the laundry, you'll give so much of yourself, you won't recognize what's left. I used to think that was poetic. Turns out it was prophecy. After she passed, the house got quiet. Too quiet. Darren moved back in temporarily after grad school. Then came Sienna, sharp-tongued, ambitious, polite in public, but always measuring space, measuring control, measuring how much longer I'd be around. It started with harmless suggestions. We should modernize the kitchen. These curtains are kind of dated, Arthur. This place needs fresh energy. I didn't argue. I nodded. I let them repaint the walls I loved, replace furniture I'd repaired with my own hands. I let them take the master bedroom. After all, I had the study. I liked the quiet, but quiet doesn't mean blind. About a year ago, I noticed they'd stopped asking if I wanted to join them for dinner. They'd just eat early or late, or order in something I wasn't invited to share. Sienna once smiled and said, we figured you'd already eaten. I hadn't. Then came the finances. Darren asked to merge a few expenses onto one shared account just for simplicity. He'd take care of the bills, he said. Let me give back to you, Dad. I smiled, trusted him. Signed where he pointed, but it was Sienna who made the real decisions. She was the one who installed a Ring camera I never asked for, who brought in a realtor just to assess the market, who told relatives over wine that Arthur's not part of the plan, but we're doing our best to include him. I heard that last one from my cousin Ben at a funeral. Ben pulled me aside and said, Arthur, are you okay? Sienna said you were thinking of moving into assisted living, that you wanted to give them the house. I stared at him. My fork paused mid-slice. I was cutting roast chicken at the time. I said that I asked. He looked away. She made it sound like it was your idea. That was the moment I knew. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were writing the eulogy early. I didn't yell. I didn't even confront Darren. I just got up the next morning, walked into the garage, and opened the drawer where I kept old manuals and mortgage files, and I read every single page. What did I find? Let's just say Darren wasn't as detail-oriented as he thought. He'd never removed my name from the deed. He'd never closed the original account we used to pay property taxes, and most interestingly of all, he'd never changed the title on the 401k savings account I'd opened for emergencies. I'd opened that account when Margaret was first diagnosed. I never touched it. He thought I'd forgotten it existed. I didn't forget. I was waiting for them to be careless enough to show their hand, and they did beautifully. The real catalyst came 3 weeks before Christmas. I was in the kitchen late at night. Couldn't sleep, made myself a cup of chamomile tea, heard whispering down the hallway. Sienna's voice. Once he's out, we can remodel and refinance. That'll fund the move to LA. We'll finally be free. Darren mumbled something I couldn't catch. Then the unmistakable sound of a high five and laughter. They were already spending the proceeds. That night, I installed a second camera, my own, hidden in a light fixture. Audio only. Clean, crisp, undetectable. And the next morning, I called Victor. Victor Sloan and I go back 40 years. We built bridges together. I mean that literally. We were engineers, but after a workplace injury sidelined him, he went to law school, specialized in estate law and property trusts. Smart guy, loyal, the kind of man who drinks black coffee and remembers your wedding anniversary even after your spouse is gone. I was wondering when you'd call, he said. When he picked up, you always were too patient for your good. I'm done being patient, I said. What followed were 3 weeks of planning, legal documents, trust accounts, revocation letters, account freezes, and one beautiful, devastating letter sealed in cream-colored stationery with no return address. I didn't tell anyone, not even Linda, my sister. I just played the part. Polite, quiet, invisible. Until Christmas. The tree was up, music playing, relatives gathered. Sienna had insisted on hosting the family dinner this year, her first time taking over from me. You've done enough, Arthur, she'd said, voice honeyed. Let us take care of everything. I was seated near the end of the table, next to the wall where Margaret's portrait used to hang. They'd replaced it with abstract art, gray, white, and beige. It looked like someone had smeared dust on a napkin and framed it. Still, I smiled, chewed politely, watched, and then Darren stood, raised his glass and said it. Dad, you're no longer part of this family. Get out of this house. I didn't blink. Sienna glanced around, testing the reaction. The table fell silent. Cousin George dropped his fork. My niece Harper let out a short, nervous laugh, then covered her mouth. I didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't ask why. Instead, I reached under the table, pulled out a sealed envelope, and slid it toward Darren with a small, steady smile. Here's your gift, son. He scoffed, tore it open. Read the first page, then the second, then the third. His hands started to tremble. What is this? He hissed. Sienna leaned over, took one look, froze, then said barely audible, "Oh my God." Everyone stared. But no one spoke, because sometimes silence is the most deafening sound in a room, especially when it's the sound of a kingdom crumbling. I didn't sleep that night. After the dinner, after the envelope, the scream and the stunned silence, I drove back to the apartment I'd rented under a pseudonym. Small place, just a chair, a lamp, and a desk. A cot in the corner. My name wasn't even on the lease. I sat by the window, looking out at the street below. There was still snow on the curb, melting into slush. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet, not even angry. Just emptied. Because long before I ever drafted legal notices or froze accounts, I had to sit with one truth. Darren had changed, and I had helped him become the man who now wanted me gone. He wasn't always like this. There was a time he couldn't sleep, unless I left the hallway light on. He'd pad into the kitchen in Superman pajamas, dragging a tattered blue blanket behind him. I'd lift him onto the counter, hand him a cookie, and listen to his latest theory about dinosaurs or pirates or time travel. There was a time he'd build Lego bridges and call them Dad's job. A time he cried when I left for business trips. A time he stood on stage at his high school graduation, voice shaking, and said, "Everything I've become is because of you, Dad." I remember that boy, and I remember the man who sat across from me 4 weeks ago, folding his arms and saying, "This house is wasted on you." It started subtly. Sienna didn't move in right away after they married. First it was weekend stays, then weekday sleepovers, then her plants showed up on the kitchen counter, then her shoes were in the foyer, then her opinions are in the air. She was good at suggestions. That's what made her dangerous. The first time she suggested they handle the bills, just to relieve the pressure. I said yes. She smiled like she was doing me a favor.
I didn't realize the cable bill had been rerouted until the TV blacked out during a Sunday game. I called support. They asked for the name on the account. Arthur Grant, I said. There was a pause. No record of that name, sir. The rep replied. It was now under Darren's. That night, I stayed awake. Something had shifted, not with a bang, but a quiet reordering, and I'd let it happen. I started looking quietly. One afternoon, they left for a weekend in Asheville, a wellness retreat. Sienna called it. I stayed behind. Said I was coming down with something. They didn't protest. The moment their car backed out of the driveway, I went to the drawer in the study. My drawer, buried under warranty manuals and old birthday cards, was a thin folder marked Mortgage 2001. I spread everything out on the dining table. The same table where Darren had built his science fair volcano. The same table where we'd carved pumpkins. Now it was a war room. Step 1. Paper trail. I found the original deed. My name, Arthur James Grant, sole owner. But beside it, a refinance document I didn't recognize. Darren's name had been added 5 years ago, during the time I was in and out of the hospital with my sciatica. I scanned the signature. It looked like mine, but I didn't remember signing it. I kept going, found joint bank statements, dozens of small withdrawals, $49.99, $12,945, a $600 charge to something called Clever Nest Interiors. One line item read, Pet Psychic Consultation. I laughed bitterly. They were using my savings to consult with someone who reads cats. Then I found it. An online banking profile was still logged in on Darren's old laptop. He was careless. They'd created a house account meant for shared expenses, but in reality, it was a siphon. I saw it all. Transfers to personal Venmo accounts, payments for spa days, a $2,700 charge to a luxury rug boutique, all from my funds. I took photos of every screen, every document, printed what I could, stored them in a fireproof folder. My hands shook when I zipped it shut. It wasn't about the money. It was about the narrative they were writing without me. Step 2. Recording. A week later, I installed a tiny audio recorder inside the recessed light fixture in the kitchen ceiling. It activated on sound, stored everything in encrypted files. I tested it myself, whispered lines, clapped, even coughed. It worked. And then I waited. They were careless with their cruelty. People like that usually are. First recording, November 28th, 10:37 p.m. Sienna. Once he's out, we tear down that wall, open floor plan. Maybe extend the deck. Darren, do we even need his consent? Sienna, the man's almost 70. We'll say it's for his safety. Second recording, December 5th, 11:12 p.m. Sienna.